Hey, welcome. If you're studying for a teaching exam or you're just really into figuring out what makes us tick, then you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're jumping into Erik Erikson's incredible theory of psychosocial development, and it all starts with a huge question about our lives. So, think about this. How do we become who we are? And does that process ever really stop? That's the huge question that drove Erikson's work. How does our personality form and change, not just when we're kids, but across our entire life? It's a question that really gets to the heart of it all. And Erikson's answer? It's this really elegant idea he called the psychosocial development theory. The main takeaway is that our personality is not set in stone when we're little. Nope. He believed it unfolds through 8 distinct stages. And at each stage, we face a specific psychological conflict, or a crisis, as he called it, that's all about how we interact with our social world. Now, to really get where Erikson was coming from, it helps to see how different he was from, say, Sigmund Freud. Freud was all about our unconscious drives and believed our personality was pretty much locked in by the time we were 5. But Erikson? He saw things totally differently. He shifted the focus to our social world and our drive to feel competent. And, most importantly, he said this development is a lifelong journey, right? This idea of a lifelong journey. It's everything to his theory. So let's unpack the framework he built to map it all out. So here's the core idea in a nutshell. At each of these 8 stages, we hit a psychosocial crisis. Now, crisis sounds dramatic, but think of it more like a turning point. If we navigate that turning point well, we come out the other side with a new psychological strength, a new virtue, that helps build a healthy personality. But if we struggle, we might carry around feelings of inadequacy. And I love this visual because it explains the whole theory so perfectly. Just picture these stages like a staircase. You have to master one step to get to the next one, right? Each stage literally builds on the successful completion of the one before it. We're going to use this staircase as our guide as we walk through a whole lifetime. Okay, let's start at the very bottom of the staircase, with those foundational stages that shape the very beginning of who we are. All right, first up, from birth to 1-year-old, it's all about trust versus mistrust. The baby is basically asking, can I count on the world to take care of me? Consistent, loving care builds trust. Then, from 1 to 3, we hit autonomy versus shame. This is the classic, I do it myself stage. Encouraging that builds their confidence. And from 3 to 6, it's initiative versus guilt. This is when kids start planning their own games and making things up. Supporting that builds a real sense of purpose.
Okay, let's climb up to the next steps on our staircase. And these next 2, well, they're absolutely critical for any teacher to understand. This is where you can make a massive difference.
In fact, our source material literally flags this next stage as the most important for teachers. So listen up. This is stage 4, industry versus inferiority, kicking in from about age 6 to 12. All of a sudden, their world is way bigger than just family. School, friends, sports. And for the first time, they're really comparing themselves to other kids. When they get praise and they succeed, they develop a sense of industry, that awesome feeling of, hey, I'm good at this. But if they're constantly facing negative feedback, that feeling of inferiority can really start to set in. And right after that comes another huge one, which the source material points out is very important for exams. This one basically defines the entire teenage experience. Stage 5, identity versus role confusion. The single biggest question for any teenager is, who am I, right? They're trying on different hats, different friend groups, different music, different styles, all to figure out where they fit in. If they have the freedom and support to explore, they can forge a really strong sense of identity. But without it, they can end up with role confusion, just feeling lost and unsure about their future. So let's look at our staircase one more time. You see these 2 steps, industry versus inferiority and identity versus role confusion? This is the sweet spot. This is where a teacher's influence can be absolutely life-changing. A positive, supportive classroom can be the thing that helps a student build competence and truly find themselves. But guess what? The journey doesn't just stop at high school graduation. Erikson showed us that our development keeps going through 3 more major stages in our adult lives. So first, in young adulthood, we face intimacy versus isolation. The challenge is forming those deep, meaningful relationships. Then comes middle adulthood with generativity versus stagnation. This is all about contributing something to the world, making our mark, and guiding the next generation. And finally, in old age, we face integrity versus despair, where we look back on our life and hopefully feel a sense of peace and satisfaction. So, what does this all mean for you as a teacher or a future teacher? Let's boil all this theory down into some clear, practical things you can do in the classroom. Okay, here's your game plan. First, to build that sense of industry, be a confidence builder. Praise real effort and accomplishment. Second, be super mindful of criticism because it can really trigger those feelings of guilt or inferiority. Third, especially with teens, support their search for who they are. Give them space to explore ideas. And really the big one that covers all of this, just create a positive, safe classroom where your students feel like they can try things, be independent, and even fail without being judged.
Look, if you're cramming for an exam and you can only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this line right here. Erikson equals psychosocial development, which equals 8 life stages. It's such a powerful way of thinking, reminding us that every single stage of life is a new chance to grow. And as educators, you get to play such a vital role in that incredible journey. Thanks for tuning in.